Kensick, President of East 10th Group, and I'd love to welcome you today to our second webinar series of the year. And this one is on executive presence for all professionals. And I am delighted to be joined today by Karen Elkins Cohen, Human Resources Director for Rubicon Programs. And Karen is an executive presence expert. She is going to be bringing to us her insights and valuable contributions on this topic. And joining her is Ann Parks, our leadership advisor and executive coach from the East 10th Group team. So welcome, Karen and Ann, and we're very much looking to your input for this very valuable topic to all of our listeners. So I'm going to hand it right over to both of you, and Karen, if you can take it away.
Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle.
Everyone. Good morning, everyone. The first thing that I'd like to do is bring your attention to the right side of your screen where you can see there's a chat function and a Q&A function. So feel free. I'd love to use the chat function, but we'll see your questions and your information either side. So thank you so much for attending this program on executive presence. This session is for professionals at all levels because having executive presence contributes to your success in every position. Executive presence is defined as the ability to behave as your corporate culture expects professionals to behave, and communicate as your corporate culture expects professionals to communicate, and finally, appear as your corporate culture expects you to appear. And that can be challenging to identify. So over the next hour, we'll be talking about ways to improve your ability to project self-confidence, take control of difficult, unpredictable situations, and hold your own with other top-notch, strong-willed members of the executive team. Whether you realize it or not, you are always communicating who you are and what you value. So being mindful that the quality of your insight, judgment, and decision-making can help bring about your best success in the workplace. If you had a chance to read Sylvia Hewlett's book on executive presence, the key three elements are gravitas, or behavior, how you act, communication, how you speak, and appearance, how you look. While Sylvia chooses gravitas to elicit a sense of confidence, we've made one adjustment. We've switched it to behavior, because behavior includes not only gravitas, but it also includes the ability to connect with people. As you can see, behavior is the largest component here, with communication a far second. Appearance does show up here. The way you're perceived in the workplace boils down to three things: appearance, communication, behavior. And while you may not be interested in being or becoming an executive, the components that contribute to being seen as a successful professional are the same, and they all lead to conveying confidence. When you think about leaders who have executive presence, Sheryl Sandberg or General Kelly, we can talk more about how his press conference got derailed, but he started strong. And what do they have in common? We're going to look at the elements of executive presence, and we're going to start with behavior. Now, using your chat function, can anyone tell me how to convey confidence through your behavior? Good, good. Okay, I see strong handshake. Yep, leaning forward. Great, eye contact. Thank you. Terrific. You can see elements to convey your behavior. Amanda had it with eye contact and strong handshake in here too. Confidence is conveyed in those ways. And grace under fire communicates how composed you are. What rattles you and how you react when you're stressed.
Karen, if I could just make a point here. Our behavior is key to executive presence, and grace under fire, this is the time when someone is pushing your buttons and you need to remain calm. And this is the time when I suggest to my clients, you have to find your Zen place and go there so you can return to the center and you can start to breathe again, because the key to when someone pushes your buttons is to eliminate the emotion. There's an old expression, calm, cool, and collected. And this is the key to executive presence, is you just can't get rattled.
I love that. Yes, find your Zen place. That's a great statement. And how do you find your Zen place? We'll be talking more about that in a few slides. What else? What's one thing that you can do to improve your confidence right now? It's something that I like to call fake it till you make it. And when you walk into a room, pretend that you are amazingly interesting, terrifically smart, and one of the most attractive people in the room. If you try it, it's really easier to make eye contact and network. And of course, we have to be careful with eye contact, right? Too much is a little creepy. Too little can make you look like you're not telling the truth. So the most important thing when it comes to eye contact is take cues from who you're talking to. That person will, will sort of show you how much eye contact they're comfortable with. Now, I love walking into a room where I don't know anyone because it means I can introduce myself. It means I don't really have to remember anybody's name because I haven't met anyone. So I like meeting new people. And once I introduce myself, I ask questions. And even though I do that, there are always awkward moments when I'm not speaking to anyone and I still feel like crawling under a table. But in those moments, I remind myself to keep smiling. You can see smile is on the slide. Smiling makes me seem friendly and approachable. So even if I'm totally uncomfortable, I'm not quite in my Zen space, as Anne calls it, I continue smiling so I seem friendly and approachable. Anne, is there anything you'd like to add here?
Well, as you all can tell, Karen is an extrovert, so she's probably very comfortable walking into these rooms and approaching, people and just having a chit-chat with them. Many of us, on the other hand, find it really difficult to walk into those rooms, especially to walk in with confidence and executive presence. So I suggest to my clients, and it seems to work, is when you walk in, do smile, put your shoulders back and stand up straight, but approach the person who's standing alone. That person is probably just like you. They're just not knowing where to go. So go to them, and, odds are good that once the two of you start talking, you'll look animated, and the animation comes with the confidence comes with it. And believe it or not, others will join you in a short while.
That's a great point, Anne. And when you're talking about walking in, one of our participants also said, yes, posture. Posture absolutely conveys confidence. And when you're walking into a room, or even when you're sitting, are you slouched in your chair? How do professionals with strong executive presence act? You can see, they find their Zen space, and they use eye contact. What types of nervous tendencies get in the way of executive presence? Admittedly, I don't like to admit it, but I have a habit of opening and closing markers when I'm using a flip chart. Or if I'm sitting in a meeting and I'm a little bit agitated or a little nervous, I open and close my cap pens, and that's really distracting. One of the things that you can do is lean forward. And studies have shown that when people put their hands on the top of a conference table or on the arms of their chairs, if their hands are not hidden, it conveys a little more confidence. And sometimes there's a perception that if your hands are hidden, maybe you're hiding something, maybe you're checking your phone under the table. Again, we're going to talk about this a lot. I can't emphasize the importance of making eye contact. And maybe you notice this, or maybe you've noticed this about other people. If you're speaking about something you're unsure of, your eyes will dart above the person's head. But keep this in mind. If you know what you're talking about and you're speaking authoritatively, make sure to use eye contact.
Karen, there's one thing about this slide that really kind of cracks me up, and I'm glad you showed it because it really has all to do with behavior. If I could just draw everyone's attention to the woman, in fact, if you could switch slides for me a second. Yes, okay. Everyone, take a quick look at the lady on the far left. She's got the pearls on. Okay. Do you think she's engaged? So here she is at a meeting, and she looks completely unengaged. So what I say to many of my clients, this is when you need the resting face. You need a pleasant, interested look, with a slight smile, because you must look engaged. That's the only way people will think that you are part of the discussion, that you care about what's being said. Okay, because the last thing you want to look like is grumpy or unhappy, and certainly you don't want to look bored, because this is a meeting. And I have to say, this weekend I was watching the Sunday news programs, and every single politician, no matter which side of the fence they were on, looked grumpy. So do your best by trying to put that slight smile on your face, look engaged to the meeting. And Karen, you might want to comment on the others that sit in that slide.
Yeah, the two women on the right, they do seem more engaged. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. They look interested.
They seem interested. I think the woman on the far right even has a slight smile, and you can see that from the side. I think she has a fabulous resting face. It says, I'm engaged, I'm interested, I can add value. The woman next to her looks like she disagrees with what the man is showing her, but maybe she's not telling him. And, even if you disagree with someone, pay attention that your resting face still has a slight smile, or you're just not looking frowny or grumpy. People are interested in what you have to say if it seems like, you are interested in the, in the topic. Lots of us.
If I could say one thing here, I mean, all of you, I don't know if any of you are sitting out there in the audience and you're sitting with a team today, but glance at their faces, see, are they naturally, engaged? Do they have a natural smile on their face? And if not, and those of you who are in New York City, and you could hear that I am, because I know we've had some fire engines in the background, so I apologize for that. But if y'all are on the subway or on the train going home and you're standing up and you're glaring, and glancing into the window, which shows your reflection, practice your resting face. Look engaged.
I love it. That is terrific advice, Anne. Yeah, take a look at the people around you. And this photo, it's just not that, I have to say, it's not that foreign. It looks like the men in the the men in the office are kind of driving the train, and sometimes that happens. We need to, we do need to. I'm gonna just take the title. Lean in, lean forward. Don't slouch. Stay engaged, and again, check on the subway. Look at your resting face. See what people are seeing when you're looking at them. The items on the slide, behavior blenders, they're career killers. I mean, I'm sure everyone's seen, sort of the outcome. Oh, you know what? And I want to go back to a participant who said there's a tendency for older women to have a resting face that's different from younger resting faces. And she says that aging causes sagging. And I think that is a really great point, that we don't want it to be, and we're going to talk more about appearance later, really about pay attention, because it's true, your face does naturally, the lines around your mouth may naturally sort of point downward, and pay attention to that. So going back to the behavior blenders, lack of integrity. Obviously, we've seen the cases of sexual impropriety. I'm going to take a moment to talk about flip-flopping, because listening to new information is smart. You may change your opinion on a subject, and that's not flip-flopping. You identify, well, this is what I was thinking before. Now that I have this new information, and I think Anne has some thoughts on flip-flopping.
Well, I have one client and a story I'd like to share with everyone. And it was, I had a client who was a notorious flip-flopper, identified by a number of 360s that we did. And my client was very social, and she ran meetings as though she was, talking to a group of, people out for a cocktail hour. So she's extremely, social. Everyone's ideas were great. She loved everything they said. And for her, and she was a true extrovert, she thought by talking out loud. But here's what was happening. After this session of a direct report meeting and everybody's having this robust discussion, her team goes back the next day and they begin to implement some of the suggestions that she was, really gung-ho about. And only to find out that a day or two later, she says, well, why are you doing that? I didn't tell you to do that. So hence the, title of flip-flopper. But what mastered was she should have simply said, because we're, like, okay, we're brainstorming. I'm just thinking this through. But her behavior indicated that she was responding positively. She liked what everyone was saying, so people fed off of that behavior. So, you have to be careful that friendliness doesn't mask your intent. So when it comes to making a decision, make sure that it is based on analysis and experience and judgment, and then act decisively and make sure everybody is with you, on that plane.
Thank you, Anne. Yes, I want to just bounce on that as well. It's the head nodding. Sometimes people nod their heads to show that you're listening, to show that you hear the person. And some people will perceive that as agreement. And I remember running a training sort of early in my career, and I could hear someone, I think it was about discrimination, and someone was talking about, making a transfer. They were saying, and I was nodding my head because I was listening and I was trying to show that I was engaged. And the person said something that was absolutely not okay. And I found myself nodding and then very quickly, shaking my head. And so pay attention to when you're, are you nodding in agreement, or are you nodding in because you're hearing the person? Because that's another way you might see it as surely I thought, people must have thought I was a flip-flopper in that moment because I was, nodding my head and then sort of shaking it in disagreement. Please, please, please don't, do whatever that person was talking about doing. Another item on here, it seems simple, but it's truly not. Being lightweight means not having substance, not knowing subject matter. And it ties right into being prepared. Don't speak authoritatively on a subject with which you're unfamiliar. Don't take away your executive presence by saying, I feel, or I could be wrong, but you don't have to say anything, or you can use the words, in my experience.
Karen, there's one thing, because you want to, when you're with a group of people and you're in a meeting, you want to show confidence. So one line I suggest to many of my clients is, when this comes up, is, let me tell you what I do know about that particular topic. Okay, so you're confident, you talk about what you do know, and then the conversation will may very well discuss the point or address the issue that was at hand, or it may go in a different direction. But at least the people sitting with you know you're knowledgeable and know you're confident about your knowledge.
That's outstanding. Yes, let me tell you what I do know. And remember, there's no shame in looking things up. If you need to say, well, let me look into it deeper. I love starting with, let me tell you what I do know. You're knowledgeable. You have information to share. I want to bring your attention, sadly, there's a major topic that creates the perception that women are less dedicated to work, and that's childcare. And surprisingly, the same is not true for men. So I always give this advice. If you need time to take time off to care for a sick child or to attend a school function, if you are a man, stay while you are taking the time off. If you are a woman, it's best in most circumstances to simply say that you have an appointment or a meeting. Studies show that men who care for their children are seen as stable workers, while women who care for their children are seen as unstable in the workforce. And while we wish that wasn't true, we know how to sort of combat that issue in the workplace. Focusing on communication. If anyone wants to add some chats in here about communication, with more communication happening via email or blogs, understanding grammar, being concise and careful to eliminate typos is critical for workforce success. If you're not sure when to use an apostrophe, look it up. If you can't remember the difference between effect and affect, please look it up. The Elements of Style is a book from Strunk and White. It's a terrific reference. And I've had it on my desk since my first promotion in management. And we have a participant who is saying that there are several websites where you can check. It looks like Grammarly is one website where you can check your grammar in your written communication. In the next slide, we'll talk more about speaking with authority. So let's move quickly to knowing when to pick up the phone. Some people prefer to communicate via email, some via phone, and some in person. And if there's one thing I want you to remember today, other than fake it till you make it, it's to find out right now how your boss prefers to communicate and your boss's boss. You may already know, but pay attention to it. Actually, one of my coaching clients is a CEO for a tech company, and almost weekly, he'll send an email to me, a draft email saying, can I send this to my employee? And I almost always respond, pick up the phone.
Karen, this is a really critical one that I really want to stress because, and I say this to everyone, in your emails, you cannot pick up tone and nuance. It is just so hard to interpret someone's tone. And this form of communication probably gets more people into trouble than anything else. And it's especially harmful to send an email when you're upset or you're angry. That is the worst. And I always say, if you are emotional, you need to enforce the 24-hour rule. And it's a simple rule. I'm sure you've all heard it before. And it's do not send anything until the following day. And this gives you time to regain your calm and reread the email with fresh eyes. Believe me, that will save a lot of emotion, turmoil, and miscommunication.
Thank you. That is, it's so hard to remember when you're in that place of frustration and feeling like something has to be done right this minute. It goes on with finding your Zen space. I love that. Write it out, purge it onto the screen or onto paper, and then just wait. Hold on to it. Some of you may be asking, why a smile on the communication side? And it's because you can smile in your communication. You can smile when you're on the phone, and people can tell when you're smiling, even when they can hear you. And there was a study done that showed that people automatically sort of focus on emails and have the perception, kind of negative connotation when they're reading their emails. So if you can sort of add a smile into your emails, I don't mean emojis; those are not necessarily appropriate for for professional communication, but just think about how your words are coming across. Going back to speaking with authority, speaking with conviction, let's talk about how to make your language more powerful. This slide is an excerpt from Harvard Business Review. It shows confident statements, power words, and it really does make a difference. One of the things that's not on here is apologizing. Some of us apologize a lot, and it really makes it harder to command a room, especially if we open with, "I'm sorry, may I have your attention?" And sometimes we say things like, "We need to speak to the client," rather than giving an individual direction. The individual, should be said, "You need to speak to the client." And sometimes that's really uncomfortable to say, but being confusing by saying "we" when you really mean "you," this just causes so much frustration and extra work in businesses every day. I had a fabulous boss many years ago who had trouble giving me tasks, and whenever she would say, "We need to draft this policy," for example, I would respond, "When you say we, you mean me, right?"
Well, Karen, this is all about, clear, crisp, and concise communication, because the clearer your message is, people will understand it. There won't be confusion behind it, and people will see you as someone knowledgeable, and, this is a positive thing. So anything you walk away with from this particular section is just keep your communication clear, crisp, and concise all the time, no matter if it's on the phone, if it's via text, if it's, via email. That should be your goal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When you think about, text and email specifically, a lot of people are looking at those things on their phones. How much do they have to scroll down? Clear, crisp, and concise. That's absolutely, very relevant. It's relevant and timely right now when so many of us are looking at everything on our phones. One thing that I noticed is, sometimes being interrupted is because you know, maybe you're running down a rabbit hole, or you're speaking slowly, you're not making a point, but sometimes people just interrupt you. And it's important that when you're being interrupted, you can interrupt back and say, please let me finish. You know, another point is about making your language more powerful and eliminating emotion. Sometimes women are accused of being too emotional for executive presence, but I find both men and women have trouble moving up the corporate ladder if they are seen as overly emotional or overly confrontational. And this is where slowing down your speech, as Anne says, your Zen place, is paramount to keeping your cool and staying focused. People with strong executive presence, they're not easily flustered. They're unflappable. And, you know, I think I've even done it in this session. I think I started the sentences with so or so and moving on. And I think so many people, I'm hearing this all over the place in interviews on TV and on the radio. How did you come up with that idea? So I was walking somewhere. It's so hard, but really we need to elevate our communication skills and eliminate so going back to, you know, what do you need to calm yourself down, speak with personal power, staying on point? You know, I actually coached an executive who kept getting roped into arguments she didn't need to be in. So she started wearing a bracelet with a special bead on it. And when she felt herself getting pulled into a conversation where she might fly off the handle, she actually slowed down her speech and turned the bead. And as she slowed her speech, she was able to respond in a non-defensive way.
So Karen, there your client did. They had their own Zen point, how to you know, take the emotion out of the situation.
That's perfect. Yeah, I should have called it her Zen bead. Oh, that's funny. And, you know, staying on point, don't get sidetracked. I like to use the term land the plane. Sometimes, and, you know, it's not that you're not, or that, you know, the people aren't, you know, just generally, you know, getting off topic for no reason. A lot of the time it's because you're trying to tell the truth. You're trying to provide more detail than what's needed. And that can really, you know, that can take you right down a rabbit hole. And so you can use an agenda. Even talking points can help you stay on track. And it may seem silly to show up to a meeting with talking points, you know, just a meeting with two people, but really, if you find yourself meandering, this is a really great way to keep your comments short and insightful.
You know, here you have to be careful too, because, you know, when you're a subject matter expert, you feel the details of your particular expertise are the most interesting thing in the world. And I just remind you, they're interesting to you and perhaps your immediate family and, you know, probably no one else. So the key is to elevate the level. As Karen said, don't go down the rabbit hole. And once again, just keep it clear, crisp, and concise, and you'll be on your way.
Thank you. And we have a participant who's asking, you know, what do you mean by personal power? And do you want to take that?
Well, personal power is being in control, okay? It's when people see you that they know when you ask them a question, they'll be able to answer it, or they'll at least be able to show you the right direction. So these are the kind of people who are good decision makers. Like when you are looking for advice on a decision that you may be making, you will identify somewhere in your workforce on someone you have watched, you know, over the months or years or whatever, who makes good decisions. They have personal power. They, you know, understand it. They've earned the right. So it's very similar to executive, you know, presence, but the personal power is knowing what they're doing, knowing how to move forward. Anything else you want to share on that, Karen?
You know what? I would just bounce back to, you know, the prior slide about making your language more powerful. That is exactly it. Make sure you're very clear about your decisions and explaining, you know, speak with personal power, and by using these, using the language tips here. Oh, great. Amanda says, got it. So glad. Okay, moving on to communication blunders. Again, this wouldn't be a valuable session if we didn't help you avoid communication blunders. If you find yourself under so much pressure that you're feeling breathless, or you're repeating yourself, just stop talking. And you can even say, please give me a moment. The best way to disarm an aggressive communicator is by slowing down your speech. Take longer breaths. And, if someone interrupts you, you can say, please let me finish, or I wasn't finished. And I've covered a few blunders here. Is there anything that resonates with you?
I have a couple. One I think is kind of a funny one, is this high-pitched shrill or crying. And I will say this, crying at the office is not a good thing. It will not build your executive presence. And I'm afraid that women, are already seen as too emotional. And for them, crying in the office simply confirms this. And people believe, and it's probably unconscious bias, but if you are emotional, you're not going to be good in a crisis. And then your team may not be able to rely on you. So you just don't want to show any weakness if you can. Now, it doesn't mean that there aren't acceptable situations where you can cry. And of course, death and illness and tragedy, perfectly acceptable. And guys out there, you really don't have the problem because so few men do cry at the office. And if they do, it's usually because of one of the three things I mentioned. But you've got to try very hard, even in a performance review or when you're making a very tough decision, you just have to be able to go to that very calm place that you have found that you can remove emotion from. It's hard, but you do need to do it. And there's some people who can cry and pull it off, but usually it is not as successful. Okay. The other one that I'm sure drives you all crazy, which drives me crazy, is this constant device checking. Probably the most annoying thing in the world, because what does it imply? That people are simply not paying attention to me if they're, glancing at their phone, they're looking at their computer, especially if you're in a team meeting, or worse if you're in a one-on-one, and God help you if you're doing it with your boss. But here's a trick that I've learned, and it's turn your phone to airplane mode. And this works because it eliminates the distractions of any, beeps or anything. But even more so, could you eliminate the phone from view? Because even though the phone may not be making any noises, we still have this tendency to look at it. So try to remove it from sight. But I like the airplane mode. Here's another reason why. Everybody now has Apple Watches, okay? And Apple Watches are just, if your phone is on airplane mode, your watch won't be beeping. So nowadays, you've got to pay attention to all those devices that you have tucked away in your briefcase, on your wrists, or wherever, okay? So anyway, try to get that phone under control. Turn away from your computer, and focus completely on the person you're talking to. In fact, if you had attended our last webinar where we talked about emotional intelligence and mindfulness, this is the time to be extremely mindful. You are to pay close attention to the person that you're talking to. People like that. They always talk about Bill Clinton, and my mom had the opportunity to meet him, and she said this, and so she confirmed everything I'd read in the paper about him, was that when you're talking to him, you feel you're the only person in the room. And it makes you feel terrific afterward. And this is what, people who have executive presence, they focus, they laser in on you. It is a fantastic thing. So get that technique down, folks.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Anne. You're absolutely so on point with that. Really, that's, executives who are highly rated and just, have followers and have, an entire organization who just want to be around. It's because they do focus on you, laser focused, and they feel like they're the only one or the most important person in the room. We have another participant who is asking about tips on avoiding upspeak, where everything sounds like a question rather than a statement. I love that. It's true. I hear it too. And she's saying it undermines authority. It really does. I remember introducing myself once, hi, my name is Karen. And the person said, Are you sure about that? Anne, do you have anything you want to share on that one?
No, I just try my very best not to do it because, you know, talk about unconscious bias is the moment I hear that, I discount the person's education and I sort of discount what they're saying. So, and it's not conscious, you know, it's just like I just somehow do it because they're speaking as though they're a valley girl in California. No offense there, Karen. But no, it is something. It is something to be avoided. But you know, I would love to hear people. If you know you're sitting out there, can you come up with some wonderful blunders for us? Because blunders are great, and there's such a learning experience, and we can hear some other stories. So I'd love for people to share some of these great communication blunders that they've seen in their lifetime.
Sure, and getting back to, you know, sort of the tips on avoiding upspeak, because, you know, it really does undermine authority. One is just feeling very, or, you know, it goes back to fake it till you make it, I think, and thinking, okay, I understand this concept, and I'm going to speak authoritatively. You can also visualize your words leaving your mouth, and visualize them sort of going down rather than going up, going down. But I do want to, I want to add that when you are avoiding upspeak, when you're avoiding that question mark at the end of your sentence, try to add that smile. Try to make sure that you have the good resting face, so you don't, you know, you do still have the sort of the sense of likability rather than negativity. Sometimes it's hard to avoid upspeak and you sound almost monotone. So adding that kind of smile to your face takes away the sound, sort of the monotone. Oh, someone added constant device checking. You know, even at home, that's a great point. This participant said, you know, Thanksgiving is coming up, so put the phone away, turn it off. I love that. Elements to convey confidence through your appearance. As we saw, appearance, you know, appearance was part of, it's sort of the third component of executive presence. It's the filter through which behavior and communication skills are evaluated. It's about looking the part. And the mere physical presence of the leader, his or her energy, the demeanor, and nonverbals do set the tone. A key point found in the Center for Talent Innovation survey of 268 senior executives was appearance. Now, would any of you be surprised if I told you that physically attractive and youthful, vigorous appearance is more important for women than men? I think Catherine hit on that already. But, you know, there is a piece where, you know, you don't want to appear too youthful because people will think that you don't have the experience needed to do the job. I remember seeing a study that said, you know, people who wear glasses are seen as are smarter. So if you want to run out there on the younger side and you want to grab some glasses, that may bode well for you in your career. Very early on in my career, I read a study that said when women put their glasses on, to make a statement, people believe that statement is more important. And when men take their glasses off, people think that statement is more important. And I used to travel around the country giving results from some surveys, and I remember I would wear my glasses and I would start the meeting with my glasses off, and when I came to a very important point, I would put my glasses on. And this was in any job interview when I was younger, I would always wear glasses to my job interview, and then later on, I would not be wearing glasses. But I think it honestly did make a difference when I was on the younger side. Now, you know, does it mean that if we don't look like Wonder Woman, we'll never have executive presence? No. It means that we need to make an effort to wear just enough makeup, but not too much. We need to be dressed appropriately. You know, shirts not too low, skirts not too high. And in the Center for Talent Innovation survey, For men, grooming and polish were deemed incredibly important, and it means, wearing appropriate clothing for the situation, having your fingernails clean and neatly trimmed, and do I have to say it, your nose hairs as well. And you can see Smile again. Smile is on every slide through here. It's a component of every item we've discussed on executive presence because being likable is important in the workplace. It really is. And a coaching client recently said, well, I think it's more important that I'm respected. It's much more important that I'm respected than liked. And I had to stop her. And I said, no. Both are equally important. It really is important to be liked and respected.
Karen, I have one comment to make. I get a kick out of the clean and well-groomed, bullet point here on the slide. And this is for the gentlemen out there. And I don't know if it's a generational thing, but button-down shirts need to be ironed. And, all aspiring leaders, when you're invited to speak to the board or some senior committee, and even if you're in a startup, you've got to dress the part. You've got to updress on that day. These kind of important meetings, those are the days you need to lose the T-shirt with the company logo. Great to have it, and I'm sure, Karen, there are ways and means that you can dress that way, but where would you do that sort of stuff?
The company picnic.
Right.
Wear that T-shirt with the company logo to the picnic. That's a good spot for it. Thanks, Anne. Appearance splendors, looking unkempt tops the list for men. Provocative dressing is in the top of the list for women. The workplace is changing, and you really have to pay attention to what's acceptable in your organization. I was working with a beer distributing company out here in California, and they always use the term, well, we're just simple beer guys. But I have to say, in the senior management meetings, there weren't visible tattoos. And even though that's, tattoos are changing and pierced ears are changing, keep in mind, take a look at the executive committee. Take a look at where you want to go. I would say, dress for the job you want, not the job you have. So look at the people who are working in the industries where you want to work and are in the positions where you want to be, and really get a sense of how you should be dressing. Don't forget, about appearance. You're in control. You can change your appearance. You can improve it. If you don't have time to style your hair before work, opt for a shorter style that's faster. Does anyone else have anything that they'd like to add to the appearance blenders? I think Jane is mentioning about a chipped manicure on an intern that she wanted to introduce to a client. Yes, unattractive nails, that's great. Oh, too much jewelry. Yes, absolutely. A participant just came in. I think it was, who was it? No, not Coco Chanel. Someone said, take off the last item of jewelry that you put on. That's a great point. And did you have something you wanted to add in here?
Sure. Yeah, on that jewelry point, you just don't want it to distract. If you're sitting and you're talking and your bracelets are jingle-jangling and everything, you just don't want to deflect from what you had to say, because what you have to say is very important. But here's a story about dressing. I had one client, who I was working with, and he said to me, I've been invited to a leadership conference. It's going to be the whole firm. It's going to be an off-site, and I don't know what to wear. So I'm like, okay, what do they tell you to wear? There must be some memo out there. And they said business casual, but jeans and sneakers were allowed. Okay, so his quandary was still, what do I wear? Do I wear jeans and sneakers? Do I not wear jeans and sneakers? Because he felt that this would be a great networking opportunity, and he wanted to impress people. So after a surprisingly lengthy conversation we had, because we went all different directions, he opted for khakis and no sneakers. Okay, so anyone want to make a guess on what senior management wore at that leadership conference? Okay, anyone type fast. Let me know what you think, what people wore. Okay, Irene thinks they wore suits. Okay, anyone else? What do you think the C-suite wore on the day of the conference? Khakis and polos. Very good, Mary. Yeah, that's a good one. Anyone else? Okay, so you got khakis and polos. Okay, blazers and slacks. Yeah, okay, Irene, I like that one. Anything else?
Katura, do you want to weigh in again?
Okay, well, let me tell you what they wore. All righty. I'm sorry. Oh, slack, yeah. Well, because they could have worn shorts, I suppose, but they didn't say anything about shorts. But anyway, so what was interesting, the CEO, he did indeed show up with jeans on, okay? No sneakers, but he also had a blazer on. So I guess he thought that he could dress up his jeans. He couldn't quite get out of the, the more formal mode. And then the president, he had khakis on, polo shirt, no jacket, okay? Nobody in the C-suite wore sneakers. So at least my client was comfortable. He chose the middle ground. So it does take time. I mean, we literally probably spent 10 minutes debating what to wear on this. And I used to think it was women who only debated about what to wear because, business casual for women is another challenge. But anyway, so think about your appearance. That's all I can say. Every morning, think about it. Make sure some of my old lines on communication, you want to look crisp. You want to look clean. You want to look like you are someone that's worthy to talk to.
And Patricia has a great story about someone who came to work on Casual Friday in a Mickey Mouse T-shirt. And Trisha's mentor asked the employee, what would you do if you were called into the CEO's office wearing that? And, even though the employee was fairly junior, the point stuck. That's great. Casual Friday is so tricky for some people. Keep in mind, pay attention. I actually, when I start a new job, even if it's Casual Friday, I wear pretty much the same thing that first Friday because I want to get a sense. Yeah, I wear the same thing throughout the week because I do want to get a sense before I show up in jeans and a polo or jeans and a sweater. I'm going to wait and see what the C-suite is wearing, what everyone is wearing before I show up in jeans and a sweater. If they're still in their suits, I'm going to show up still in my suit.
Right, because it's really, to each organization, it's what is culturally acceptable. And in today's, range and continuum, you've got one side that investment bankers really haven't changed their appearance too much, and then the far extreme of the startups, you do see flip-flops, you do see a pair of shorts. So it really depends on your company's, culture.
Mm-hmm. That's true. So speaking of corporate culture, take care of your online image. I'm out in California, and Facebook employees, their Facebook accounts are actually their employee accounts, which I find is really interesting. But be very careful about what you post on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all of those. Who or what is in your profile, or how many years are in your profile photo. Remember, the profile photo is usually available for the general public to see. Are you in your underwear, skimpy bikini? And actually, just recently, I had an employee who had asked for time off to attend his uncle's funeral in Spain. And when the coworker looked at Facebook, she found this employee was enjoying a vacation in Bali. They weren't connected on Facebook, but his profile was open to the public. Now, this study was done 3 years ago. It says 78%. How many of you think that number has gone up? Oh, Catherine is saying, what men wear, on Casual Fridays is different, and that is true. And Irene said, yeah, I think that number has gone up. Yes, and it's hard in some organizations if there aren't women in the C-suite. It's hard to figure out what are the women, what are they wearing. Catherine says the women dress up more on casual days, even so.
Right. And, Karen, I just want to jump in here a second. I want to give the folks some time for some Q&A, at the end of our, running through the slides. But before I turn it back over to you, one thing I want people to remember, LinkedIn is your, social media for business. So make sure that headshot does not show you on vacation, okay? Make sure it's a serious one. And, guys, when you get back to the office, Google yourself. See what happens, because what's going to happen is your social media account's going to come up. So everyone sees what's on your social media, even though you may think it's private. Okay, so be very, very careful on that. But I do know that Michelle wants us to have some time for Q&A, so I turn it back to you, Karen, to finish us off.
Yes, thank you. What can you do today? We'd love to hear about a technique that you either learned today or you think is the most important, the most effective, that you think we should really pay attention to. Is there anything? I just want to bring your attention back to the professional photo in LinkedIn. I remember, I was hiring for a chief chief employment counsel. And, one of the candidates that I looked up on LinkedIn just had an iPhone photo or a phone photo. It wasn't a professional photo. And I was very, I thought, it's really important to have, at certain levels, you should, and if this is where you want to go, have someone take professional photos, even Sears. So Frank says, oh, this is a great point. Frank talks about being overweight. How does being overweight affect executive presence, and what do we say as coaches? That's a great point, Frank. I think, what I'd like to say is that if you are in the C-suite already, there are personal shoppers who are able to help find clothes that fit very well. And if you are overweight, it does affect executive presence in some ways, but what affects it most is dressing for your frame. And if you cannot afford a personal shopper, that's okay. There are so many resources on the internet that will guide you to clothing that makes you look the executive no matter your weight. And that's what I would recommend for you as coaches, is talk through, find resources, say, okay, this is really the way that you're going to want to dress. This is the shape of the clothing that fits best and is, looks the best on you.
And I'll add a couple, just a couple things just to reiterate the point. Well-fitting clothes is really the answer. And the other thing is just look current. You can't look like you're dressing for, like how you dressed 20 years ago. So well-fitting clothes and be somewhat current. I don't mean, turning to a fad looking, whatever is like that, but being current on what people in your different culture and community are wearing.
Yes. Irene says, I love this. Write down the names of people you meet, and then you can address them by name in a meeting. And Katura is talking about the smile technique.
Hold on, let's go back a second here. Let's see. So I think that's a great technique that, and I don't know if you folks are being able to see the question, but it's helpful to address people by name because they immediately feel that you're paying attention to them and that you've remembered them. All a good thing. Okay, Karen, sorry to jump in on that.
No, that's a great point. And I find, and Irene says to write it down, I find that even if I'm not in a meeting, if I write down the person's name, I'm more likely to remember it later. And absolutely, Kara is talking about the smile technique. Suggested to execs during doing internal videos, making presentations, but even leaving an important voicemail. And you don't have to grin, but smiling or thinking about something pleasant before you start can help your delivery. That's an outstanding addition. Thank you so much. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Michelle, if you'd like to take over here.
Sure, Karen and Ann, thanks so much. A few of the things that really stood out to me today, and I appreciated the back and forth and the stellar stories that were shared with everyone that was listening in today. Find your Zen place. Loved that. I thought that was just such a helpful hint and technique for everyone to use. The resting face stood out to me, and particularly when you jumped in and talked about, let me tell you what I do know about whatever the subject matter is. I think that's a great phrase for all of our listeners to take away and to remember when you're in a situation where you're being asked for input. That's a really great way to really demonstrate and show strong executive presence in your communications. And then the 24-hour rule in terms of waiting and pausing in terms of reaction and responses to emails. I call that the pause. We can call it the 24-hour rule, but that goes a long way and really demonstrates what you opened with, which is being calm, cool, and collected. And all of that really sums up and goes to how we all as professionals can demonstrate and show and up-level our executive presence. And that's what we like to do here at East 10th Group. We really like to be very action-oriented and very practical about what our approach is. And we do offer support for all of this, whether it's through our leadership programs, which are bespoke and one-on-one, or through our much more intensive executive coaching that we do with our clients. And then we also offer people strategy, which is our HR consulting support. And if you'd like to get in touch with us following this webinar today, you can certainly reach us through our website, or you can email me at michelle@east10thgroup.com or Ann at aparks@east10thgroup.com, and follow us online. You can easily Google us and find us on Twitter, Facebook, and on LinkedIn, and there you'll get some great practical tips and actionable insights from us in terms of how you can up-level your leadership and HR capabilities. We're very excited for Karen to have joined us and provided her expertise today. Ann, thank you so much. And thank you all who were able to join us. You'll be getting a thank you note from us tomorrow, and that will include an article that Ann has written with her additional insights around executive presence. Thanks so much, everyone. We're very happy that you joined us today. Bye-bye.